After a week's break, we're back! And after a 3-year absence, a certain great and powerful pony is back as well. Let's see how this big return holds up in no second Prances. In preparation for a dinner with Princess Celestia, Twilight tasks Starlight to go out and make a new friend to bring as her guest. After finding it difficult and stressful, she finally manages to do so, but much to Twilight's dismay...
She's great! Great! She's powerful! Powerful? She's... Hello, Princess. Trrrixie?
Worried about her potential influence on Starlight, Twilight tries to convince her that Trrrixie might not be the best pony to hang around with, and tries to persuade her to make friends with others. The preview clip released a whole week prior to the episode's airing quickly drummed up a considerable amount of hype and anticipation. And I'm happy to say that No Second Prances does not disappoint. Starlight continues to become more likeable with every episode, and her struggle to make a good first impression and form any new friendships is a very easy one to relate to, especially in one scene where she tells herself to stop stressing, only to stress herself out even more. That's a feeling I know all too well. When she finally does make a new friend in Trrrixie, Twilight immediately becomes uncomfortable with the situation based on their history. Much has been said about this reaction in relation to the ending of Magic Duel, where it seemed like Trrrixie had reformed and Twilight had forgiven her for her actions. I sort of agree and disagree with this. I believe that Trrrixie did realise that she had gone too far and her apology was genuine, and I think Twilight believed that as well, but I don't know if that meant that she was completely reformed. While Starlight was ready and willing to turn over a new leaf after eventually realising the error of her ways, I'm not sure the same can necessarily be said for Trrrixie at that time. She may have stated, or at the very least implied, that she was going to make a change, but I think her sincerity and general understanding of reformation is called into question by how she announces herself as great and apologetic in the same way that she would when putting on a performance. That, above all else, is what Trrrixie is, a performer, and at the time we hadn't seen any other side to her that was more serious or personal. So I don't think Twilight feeling uneasy about her presence or being around Starlight is that unreasonable. I mean, she spends the entire first act being a bit like a pony version of Monica Geller when sorting out her silverware placement. And what's the first thing Trrrixie does upon entering the castle? Messes it all up. But speaking of Trrrixie in this episode, her character is actually very well handled and developed. That more serious and personal side that we hadn't seen from her before is explored here, as she explains how ponies still judge her for her past wrongdoings, but she is trying hard to make a change, even going on an excessively long-titled apology tour.
The humble and penitent Trrrixie's Equestrian Apology Tour. That's kind of a mouthful. It's a working title.
Yet we also learn that she's jealous of Twilight and still desires to beat her at something. The fact that Trrrixie is working hard to be a better pony, but her past rivalries with Twilight can cause her to slip back into her old ways, which causes her to hurt Starlight's feelings later on, makes her path to redemption a rather interesting and realistic one. As they reflect upon their past, there does feel like there is a real connection between Trrrixie and Starlight, especially late in the episode when Trrrixie reveals that she has spent her whole life without any friends, and her best chance at fixing that was ruined by her own mistake of using Starlight to finally get a one-up on Twilight. There's a scene during the second act where Trrrixie explains how she wants to pull off this dangerous magic trick that only one pony has ever been able to accomplish, and that if things go wrong, the results would be fatal. Starlight agrees to be her assistant, but when she runs away feeling hurt, Trrrixie presses on and tries to do the trick by herself. And like many other viewers, I did have to wonder if this implied that Trrrixie had become so depressed that she was seriously feeling suicidal. She doesn't even attempt to put on a crowd-pleasing performance, knows the risks if the stunt fails, and hopes that Starlight still cares enough to help her. And nothing about this entire sequence is played out for comedic effect. Jim Miller later stated on Twitter that this wasn't the intention, but if this is how you interpreted it, all the better. So the fact that the idea still seems plausible is still really deep for the show. There isn't really a lot else to the episode outside of the main conflict, but it works so well that that's really all it needs. And the main reason why it works is because all the ponies involved and all their actions feel authentic. As aforementioned, Trrrixie wants to be a better pony and repair her reputation, but she's still prone to reverting back to her old ways. Twilight wants to look out for Starlight, but her insecurities cause her to make idiotic choices like trying to choose her friends for her, and Starlight wants to do right by her teacher while also making new friends, but becomes so frustrated with Twilight's actions that she deliberately forgoes the dinner without telling her. They all have good intentions, but they all make believable mistakes, ensuring that there's no bad pony in this conflict, but there's no perfect one either. And the episode is very clever in how it never favours one side over another, but never leaves them without any understandable motives for their actions. The only real downside to this episode for me is how Celestia is portrayed. Earlier, as Twilight tries to pick new friends for Starlight, we get some fun background pony cameos that are actually quite well chosen. During one of Starlight's failed attempts at making friends, there's a really humorous moment where she magically puts a lot of big, articulate words in Big Mac's mouth, because she says that she can't really be friends with someone who doesn't talk much. So when Twilight suggests DJ Pone3, who has always been mute, and Derpy, who remained silent for a long time until Slice of Life, it kinda works as an ironic joke, and prevents these cameos from feeling random or forced. The inclusion of Cranky Doodle as a clueless guest who's just there for the food is a great added touch as well. But the way Celestia is dismissive of all three of them at the dinner really doesn't feel right. I understand that she's bored and fed up, but they are still there as guests, and when you shrug them off or ignore them like that, that's pretty rude. But besides that, No Second Prances is an excellent episode with an engaging narrative and well-defined characters, both of which are treated with wonderful execution that not only held my attention throughout, but also left me thinking for quite some time afterwards, and I always love when episodes do that. It doesn't quite get the top score, but it's still easily the best Season 6 outing yet, and as such earns a gold star score of 9 out of 10.